everyone. Hope you're all well. Happy Sunday. So, we're going to be speaking a little bit about how to deal with stress, being tired, feeling overwhelmed. We all sort of go through this. It's part of life and human nature, but there are also periods of time where there's just a lot going on and responsibilities, things we would like to achieve, providing for one's family, having additional things what one has to do on top of all the normal things or particular challenges in one's life, just normal life, and trying to just get through another day and hoping for better days. So why don't we take a moment to sort of center ourselves? It is just so essential to take those moments to breathe and to slow down our momentum. As you all may have gathered, the teachings during the week, and sometimes they are important ones, which I moved to Sunday as that's our normal day. These winter teachings are a lot about prayer and meditation, and they present very important ways to progress along the spiritual path. And just because I present them in a row, don't think they're beginners or preliminary. I really share things that I've learned over the last 20 years from Eastern and Western ways. And they present an entire path. And the presence of mindfulness and being able to connect with God isn't just a religious thing. It helps us live our lives with God and in healthier ways and in stronger ways. It strengthens us when we face adversity. These teachings are meant to be lived, not just for that moment you've set aside each day or once a week, but all the time. It's really the bedrock. And that's why I had taken that 3-month period during the winter and is now being represented to really create that strong foundation. Any house that's built has to have a strong foundation. And then it could be grown on top. And in fact, that foundation becomes your house, interestingly enough. Because that foundation we create through how we strengthen, how we connect, how we find presence, how we find calm, really becomes us. And it's us in the alignment with God. And from that, we are in the slipstream, in the Wi-Fi, where we can get strength, and clarity, and wisdom that is beyond what we are personally capable of. That sort of extra sensory perception, inner knowing, an ability to look at a set of facts and see beyond the words, to see trends one may not otherwise be able to see, to have a perspective that one normally would not have, or a perspective that others can't see. But one has to grow in this and get comfort in this, and you make sure you're grounded and that it's accurate. So it's something you sort of grow. You just don't jump into the deep side of the pool and think you're going to be able to swim. You start in the shallow end, just a little bit and a little bit, and then when you realize you're a swimmer, you rely on those skills more and more. So it's done mindfully. But we really start at home in our little space we've created, that little physical space, with that time we've set aside, and we develop. As we develop, we're able to take it out in the world, take it out in the crazy, in the noise, in the exhaustion, and it becomes present. 24/7, that space we've cultivated and learned is with us, and we live in a different way. To give an example, not to make myself all that, because a lot of people eventually develop an ability like this. There was once a beginning meditator that I knew, and I wanted to sort of inspire him, and he had problems connecting, and he well, this doesn't really have real world applications, or he was sort of limiting himself. And I said, look, we practice in a small space and we grow in presence. But let me show you what's possible. And I've been doing it for a while, mind you. Just like we learn in a small room and have that presence and calm, I could literally do this on the side of the road in Times Square and have the same presence and calm. It's a muscle we exercise, and we realize everything coming at us doesn't really need to affect us, because we become like a mountain inside. A mountain doesn't move. This is an Eastern analogy. A wonderful teacher once spoke to me about this. I'm going to use her example. She was such a wonderful woman, very high level, kind, generous, very present, very powerful woman. She says, a mountain is solid. You can build a ski lift on it, and the mountain holds it. Animals live on it. Could snow on it. There can be massive storms on it, winter storms, heavy winds, heavy snow. It can get really dry during the summer and get scorched, but the mountain is ever present and still. And it's not that it pushes away what's happening, it's that it's one with it. It goes through it and around it, but it doesn't necessarily land at its core of what it is. It maintains its present. It accommodates, this was a key point, everything that's going around it. it's easier said than done. It's the fruition. It's something one ends up attaining. But by being mindful of what's possible, as one does the practice, one is able to resonate along the path and achieve it faster because you know the destination. And that's why it's so important, and why I encourage people to put it into practice, because you can't have an apple if you don't plant the apple tree and you water it. We are watering ourselves. We are fertilizing ourselves. We are pulling out the weeds that keep the nutrition or block us by releasing things and working on our bodies. And if we need, antidepressants and more yoga, do you see what I'm talking about? So we're nurturing the soil so we grow a wonderful tree, and the fruit of it is the achievements of calmness, peace, connection with the divine that we achieve. So it's not just like, oh, do this, and it's, oh my God, there's a purpose. And we realize and see, tangibly see and sense, that we're able and we have the tools to deal with periods of stress and being exhausted and overwhelmed and feeling that a lot's on our shoulders, and we have to get through it because there's just no option. There's children to feed, there's rent to be paid, there's health issues going on. You can't drop the ball. Ultimately, when one lives in the present moment, these thoughts don't exist. Afflictive emotions, stress, anxiety, feeling that pressure, don't exist. Why? In the present moment, there's just awareness with a capital A. And a knowing with a capital K. And a doing our actions. A doing with a capital D. There's a lack of thoughts. You just do. But it's intelligent. The mind has stepped back. The mind has receded. And our inner consciousness, our birthright, is now in the driver's seat. And from that place, there's a lot of strength. Because all these other things that take from our bandwidth of being able to manifest have receded. Remember, they're not pushed away. It's like the glass, the example I gave with the glass with dirt, and you shake it up, and then the dirt, through calm and practice, recedes to the bottom. The thoughts recede to the bottom. The anxiety recedes to the bottom. And if they should come up, you learn to just, or you say what it is. This is heavy, it's a lot, I'm exhausted. And sometimes that's helpful, just to give voice to that. And then you just go back right to doing it. But I want to get to that a little later. So this is sort of conceptually what's going on overall. So I kind of wanted to mention this at the beginning because as I edit the teachings and put them up in a permanent form going forward over the last couple weeks, months, this really highlights the importance of it and putting in the time. It is one of the best investments of time. And that's why I put them up. It's the core of everything that I teach. And as opposed to sprinkling it over the next year or two, in some traditions, it's presented at the beginning. And I agree with that philosophy. And everything on top. Because everything on top is really understood in conjunction with levels of attainment and practice, even if it's a little bit. And you know the direction where you're going. Takes a while to live in presence with no thoughts, and you hop in and you hop out. It's takes a while. It's levels that, but you could always have that little glimpse in the middle of an argument. Suddenly, because of your practice, you just, without trying, just boom, step. It's just you see it with awareness, and you have a glimpse of that. Even for a couple seconds, you're like, oh my God, that's what he's talking about. In that 2 seconds, everything in the situation is just present to you. And you see it in a whole different way. So let's take a moment and sort of touch in. I kind of launched into it a little bit. So maybe over the next week or two, you want to listen to these teachings again at the beginning. But let's just take a breath. Feel our surroundings. Exhale. This actually was a good practice. I put a lot of energy and a lot of thoughts at the beginning. People may feel a little amped up. So we're going to use this. Now, release the thoughts from your mind of what I said. And relax. Find your posture. Are you comfortable? Spine straight. Comfortable position of the neck, even if you're in a chair. Or if you're lying in bed. It could be people listening in their bed, or they're ill and they can't stand up. So wherever you are is fine. Hands in the right position, leg in the right position. You're not feeling any pain. And you exhale and breathe and just let go. Do this for a couple minutes, okay? And I'm going to do it too. need a little water and it's next to you, feel free to take a drink. If you notice the room is stuffy and not enough oxygen, then open a window. Fresh air is very important. But if there's no water, don't leave that space. You'll create momentum. That's why it's important to be prepared. As you center, you could just center using the technique like I described and focusing on that. Or you could bring in the name that you focus on and say it a couple times. And hopefully with your practice, you have a name that helps you feel present and calm. Now, people may be now working with multiple names, and some can amp you up, because that's the energy that name provides for you, and you feel there's a need of sort of that kind of connect or burn through things, or but you used a name that you find calming. And if your name doesn't provide that, there's nothing wrong with that. But you should look for another name where you find that calming. Or the name that you use is able to provide different energies, depending on what you need. And then you use that name. So let's find our calm. So make sure you remain in presence and aware of your body, the room. You could be aware of the thoughts that's going through your mind, but not following them. Remember, there's an inner seer. Your thoughts are not you. If you are caught and go into a storyline or things you're thinking about, that's okay. Once you notice it, you just simply and gently bring yourself back to the object of your awareness, where you've grounded where you've put your attention to. It could be your breath, your body, the room, a sound, your prayer space in front of you, and it's a light touch. It's light. There's nothing forced because we're learning to settle. There are no forced postures. There's no forced point of focus. It's relaxed, expansive, eventually, present. And you're doing it right. Even if your mind wanders, you just bring it back. And you bring it back. You bring it back. In a way, just like when you're training an animal like a dog, you're learning it to bring your mind to heel. That your mind walks alongside you and you're in control. And the mind is disciplined, so it's there beside you, not pulling you, not leading you another direction, not throwing you off balance. That it's there alongside and present with you. You work in harmony together. So let's spend a few more minutes so very gently and softly, without saying the word out loud, saying it in your mind. You say the name of God that brings you calm and presence very slowly. You feel the vibration of the name go through your body. So Yahweh provides this for me at the moment. When I first started the name, it was like electricity. So that would not have been the right name for this practice, because they would have charged me. In fact, when I did it once at 3 a.m, I couldn't get back to sleep for the rest of the night. Now I do it when I go to sleep. So the name puts you into presence and allows you to slip into the next level of embodiment. But this time, God, through the name, envelops you like in a cocoon of energy. And we develop this through practicing it. So you take a couple breaths, you adjust. If there's any tension, you relax the tension. Move if there's any pain. any strain in your body with the hand or in the legs or in the hip area. You're comfortable. If you're a little thirsty, you take a sip of the room temperature water, and then a couple deep breaths. And then when you're ready, you say the name and you feel the vibration of those syllables, the sounds of the letters in the name kind of go through your body as you say it internally. The divine syllables blessing every cell, the divine presence infusing into you, divine presence entering and living in every space within you. And it just needs to be said a couple times, and it's said slowly. There's nothing forced, and it's not the number of times. It could be continuously, if that feels what's right, or it could just be a couple times and then you feel that it's done what it needs to do, and then you feel that energy continue. It brings in the blessing in a very complete, deep way. So let's try that. So for an example, it could be like this. The name, hold on. Find my alignment. Relaxing. Feel the presence. It's helpful to have your mind closed, your eyes closed, mind open, eyes closed. Find that stillness. So it said that, but in your mind, or Hashem, Hashem, or Emmanuel, Emmanuel, Elohim, Elohim, Adonai, 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 Adonai. Alright, so with your name that you use, why don't you do this for a couple minutes? Just go with the flow. Don't think of the speed. It's soft, and just go with how you feel to do it. Release any intent and just go with it. with this, the awareness is placed internally, and you just see how you feel. As you do it, that anchors the brain, and you relax. I feel, my body feels fuzzy when I do this. I literally feel God infusing my body, and my body feels it's like a glass of water, and the name and the blessing is like milk of God, the blessings and presence and essence of God being poured into my water, and the water turns sort of milky. That's what I sense. It's no longer my body, but my body is being infused with health and healing and the divine blessings infusing it. So it's no longer me, but it has Yahweh consciously being brought in. He's always with us, but with the name, we're really bringing in that energy and making it so apparent. In this practice, it often feels, at least right now for me, that it's coming in from the outside. The syllable, the name, the vibration. And we invite the blessing, the divine milk, into us. And we are with it. It doesn't have to be a color. It's almost that feeling of it. Water has a certain way, and milk, it feels fuller, and it feels whole, and it's not acidic. It feeds our children. It feeds us. And that's, let's see, why don't you work with that for a couple minutes? Release any tension, anxiety, tiredness. Doing this practice is like being in a spa. Getting that wonderful massage that puts you between being awake and asleep and leaves you purring. You're purring inside like a kitten, a cat. Because you're in that beautiful, warm, divine cocoon where things are released, tension, anxiety, and the wholesome, nurturing energy, milky energy of God permeates us, infuses itself with us. So let's do this a little bit. Okay. So we take this with us. So as we take deeper breaths and we come back into our bodies, this infusion of divine blessing remains with us. It's safe, it's divine. So we are open to incorporating it within us, to make it part of our being in deeper ways, consciously. So, as we slowly move out of any posture we're in, move in our chairs, slowly open our eyes, become increasingly present. Our minds reactivate a little bit. We go slowly so that energy remains. We don't push it away. It boots back up with us. So more conscious breathing. Drink some water. All right, so we're... So this can be done at any time during the day. You just find a quiet place, or even in a noisy place, you just center yourself. You don't even need to close your eyes. You look at a place that's something that's not moving, a chair, a table, a wall, or right in front of you or whatever, you kind of lose focus with your eyes, and you could just say that name and feel that infusion, that divine milk and honey, that place of God, and you just invite the frequency of that name of blessing, where you feel that particular quality of God, and you consciously invite it in like an antidote. You have a headache, you take a pill. You have muscle pains, you take an Advil. You're tired, you take a tea or a coffee, right? So when you feel you need it, you take and ingest a little bit of God, His frequency. And with practice, it does shift and change things. A little bit towards the end, I'm going to discuss how to do this before going to sleep. So our whole night, we can be basking in that energy. And with practice, we ended up feeling it more and more, to the point when we wake up, we felt we've been with that energy the whole night. Because that frequency has grown with us, and we're able to connect with it in deeper ways, that it literally follows us for our whole night. But I don't want to get ahead of myself here. There's certain things I would like to mention. I've been sort of thinking on what to say for the last couple days, because I want to give some practical, conscious things about how to work with stress and anxiety. And I've been sort of working with this lately because there's a lot going on. And sometimes it could be a little scary, right? Like I said, on the path, you could be at somewhere sometime, and then you can get a little worn out, and then you're in a different place. And you have to learn to develop the skills on what to do with where you are at the moment. And by learning to work at that place, one eventually is able to transcend it to some other place where it's different. So I think I'll start a little bit with the practical things we can do every day. And then we'll finish with the teaching on sort of a sleep practice at night. So powerful, so it's really an ancient practice that's very mystical and esoteric, that's taught by many, many different traditions. So, but I would like to for once I've done notes. So I'm going through my notes here. So when stress and burden, heaviness, overwhelm, or there's a lot riding, and it's day in, day out, and we kind of don't see when it might end. By embracing it with presence and acceptance, One of my favorite sayings is, "It is what it is." It's sort of that, you know what? It is what it is. Pardon my French, it's shitty. There's a lot of power of just saying what it is. This is really hard. It's overwhelming. Because that's what you're feeling. But then you just learn to let that pass. You're not obsessed with how it is, because it's like adding an additional burden of that judgment of it. But that doesn't mean you also push away what's going on and say, oh, it's all good and fine. You'd be like, no, this is really hell. But then you realize you're going through it. And so you sort of recognize what's going on, and then you find that inner fortitude, that inner strength, which just sort of accepts the circumstance and what's required or what needs to be done at that moment to keep moving forward. And that acceptance is not saying it's okay. Okay, because at this level, we're not in presence, because the thinking's different at the higher level. So I'm not going to talk about that. The acceptance and saying, you know what, I'm not resisting what's going on. And it doesn't mean that it's okay, and it doesn't mean we need to work to get out of it, or this needs to end at some point. Why? Because these states, we hope to go to something a little better, right? It's not saying it's okay that the level of this is somehow okay and normal. Okay? But it's an acceptance of the situation. You're letting go of the resistance and saying, you know what? I'm in this soup. I'm in the soup. It's that acceptance of the situation. And then we learn to just be the swimming aspect in the soup. We are not focused on the soup, but we're focused on swimming in the soup. How do we navigate this soup? This environment that we're in. And it's no judgment, it's a soup. It could be a good soup. It could be, well, in this situation, it's really not a good soup. But it's sort of an English expression where, we're in a soup of something. It's not clear water, right? There's something. And how do we swim? How do we navigate with presence and not allowing our thoughts to further make the soup more turbulent or spicy or heavy or hard? Because that's an additional layer that we add to it, our resistance. By the acceptance of that, we're actually giving ourselves back energy, because that lack of acceptance kind of fries our mind if we think about it. It's like crossing our wires, and we're creating a short circuit in our minds, and energy just bleeds. That spinning of resistance and anger and irritation and overwhelm, these are all emotions. Even overwhelmed is an emotion. And by just learning to be like, I'm in a soup, how am I swimming? And doing it mindfully, all that chi, that life force, which is in the resistance, Eastern teachings, resistance to what's going on, becomes available. Because the resistance and the judgment of it really takes so much energy. And it exhausts us. It really exhausts us. And when one learns by taking moments of quiet, saying the name as an antidote to what's going on, because that blessing is like a divine pill that has a counter reaction to what is harming us, to the thoughts and the resistance. of what's going on and brings us back into our divine presence, that mountain of resilience to what's going on. The teacher added a little different, another aspect I didn't mention, which is important, and it kind of shocked me when she said it, because she was so prim and proper and manners impeccable, and how she sat and everything. It just held her in such high esteem. Just impeccable woman. She said, animals also, her words, shit and piss on the mountain. It's important to know that on that mountain, there could be things that trespass on us, that puts things that we don't necessarily like, right? But somehow, the mountain still is able to hold all of that. See, it's from an acceptance. It's not from a hardening. Like, we never harden. It just flows through, and it's just what it is. It is what it is. And it doesn't mean we don't do anything, or there isn't an action required or anything, but that sort of saying, you know what, that's what's coming up. It allows a clarity to come forth. Because our mind is not in the turbulence of resentment or anxiety or irritation, which is like that murky cloud or thunderstorm, sediment in our water. But because we've come to learn how to calm it, the consciousness and presence of the divine, of our soul, of our luminosity within us is able to shine forth. And the energy we emanate from that can calm people around us, make it less likely that these things come towards us, because it's just not able to manifest, because the energy that's with us just disempowers it, or never comes at us in a certain way, because consciously or subconsciously other people know it's just not going to land, or it doesn't even enter their minds. Does that make sense? If it sounds a little out there, it's real, just keep an open mind and put a little flag there that eventually, as one progresses, you'll be like, oh my God, oh now I understand. Kind of we not just absorb, we emit a frequency. So in society, there's a lot of absorption. Eventually you get to the point that we emit, and then we get to the point that we only emit. When we're a presence, we don't allow external things to really affect us as much. But right now, it's a little bit of both. Presence is consciousness, and then the emotions fall away. The world becomes more expansive, open, and actually calmer, even in the chaos. And ultimately, that connection is our refuge. It becomes our safe place. And it's not from hiding within and putting up walls. but it's that unconditional openness. Not acceptance, but it's the openness like space. Open space like the sky. I'm heading to a really profound teaching here. It's like the sky. And in the sky there are clouds, permits clouds. It could be blue sky. It could be thunderstorm, rainstorm, allows tornadoes and hurricanes. The sky, things come and it goes, but the sky, the open space, accommodates things. Birds, airplanes, baseballs. You see? Accommodates leaves falling from trees. It accommodates trees. It accommodates humans, because the sky is not just up there, that space goes all the way to the ground. And we learn to sort of have that open unfolding. At our root is our consciousness that is linked, that consciousness comes from our soul. We are embodied souls with the embodied presence of the divine here on this planet. Doesn't mean we're the divine, let's not take it too far. But that divine spark, that consciousness that we are children of God, and God in a way is living through us in our presence. That's the core. In a way, that's our earth. And the things that come around and through can live in a spaciousness of acceptance. In a way, the mountain is our souls that are embodied in our bodies. And when one learns to the exercises that I've presented, more and more to live from that space, a whole different way of being emerges. How we engage with our world completely changes, because our perspective and how we work with emotions in our minds and what's going on outside of us as well as inside of us is very different, and a new way of being, a rebirth, occurs. Some would call it, when you reach a certain point, stages of enlightenment or stages of sainthood. Stages, I would say, of different levels of manifesting as an Emmanuel. As we work ourselves to being closer to manifestations that are closer to the perfection of God. Bringing ourselves back to Eden, that factory setting. And in our lives, we can walk that path. And so when the turbulence is occurring or things are happening, we can take that 5 minutes, shut that door, find a quiet place, or just pull within in the chaos and just take those breaths, call in that name, and just relax and breathe. Often we'll be seated, so you could put your hands, palms down, sort of, between your hip and your knees, or hands cupped, or whatever. People don't need to notice. It doesn't need to become a thing. But you just pull in, take a couple breaths, regain and touch in with your presence. Even doing it briefly breaks the momentum of the emotions in your mind. And the more often you have these little breaks, or you take these moments throughout the day, even if it's a normal day, just to regain the presence, creates breaks in that current that we're so used to, and eventually it'll fall apart. This is a meditative technique that's suggested. They even suggest putting on a little alarm, and I think with the iWatches and things it's easier to do, and other watches, that it just vibrates or whatever every 2 hours, or every hour, or even every 30 minutes if you're able to, and you feel it. And that's the reminder, take a couple breaths, be mindful. Where am I? And just step back. And that takes breaks, causes breaks in the momentum of the mind, in the momentum of the emotions, the momentum of having lost your presence in what you're doing. The inner presence, the inner consciousness. And as one learns to step back and step back and step back over the course of weeks and months, suddenly, one day you realize you just spent the whole day being present and aware and awake as what you're doing, with a whole different way of, and it's so interesting, you're more in control. You engage in a very different way that's so much more empowering. You're able to navigate situations in a more precise, even surgical way, by being less reactive and just more conscious and present and wise. So interesting, isn't it? We wouldn't think that would be the case. We would think we would be out there in the clouds and not focused, but in fact, we empower ourselves. So those 5 minutes, so important. Or just take a walk. Don't have lunch at your desk brought to you, right? If that's the type of job you have. Or have it at work. If the weather is good, get your food and just take that 10-15 minutes to eat it on a quiet little park or a plaza. You know, when I worked in New York City, offices were intense. I would grab my food during the summer, and when it's warmer, or even in winter when it was bad, with my winter coat, and just sit on a bench in front of sometimes Rockefeller Center, there's a little place next to the ice skating ring, and I ate it for 10 minutes in the quiet to give that sense of calm. Or find a quiet room. Or go for a brief walk. But you watch the speed that you walk, and just sit down and just be there. And allow everything to radiate out. So we're not caught in the anxiety. We're not caught in the tiredness of it. We're breaking that cycle, and we realize there is that strength. We're bringing in life force, chi, prana into us when we do this. It's available in our breath. It's available all around us. Is a teaching I've not given yet. And when we take that moment, that life force that is all around us in the air and in the oxygen in our environment, it permits us to come into us. And we get what we call our second wind, or third, or fourth, or fifth wind. Because there's so much there to sustain us, but we're just emitting so much that we're not able to absorb it in. And then we have the name we could call in. That wholesome milk with honey that just nourishes us with all the blessings of God. And it's conscious, divine consciousness. And it has wisdom and guidance. And we learn to resonate because in a way we've connected with that Wi-Fi. And we've allowed the signal in, if only for those 5 minutes or 3 minutes or 1 minute. And off we go. And even if we lose that connection right away when we get up, which is, at the beginning, it's kind of sometimes really happens. But by getting into that practice of touching in throughout the day, the signal tends to stick around. And you feel it more and more as you move around. You don't lose it within 5-10 minutes anymore. And even 2 hours later, when one loses one's presence, way before, you turn back and you realize, oh my God, it's still there. I still feel it. It's just more subtle. And then things begin to change. And you're bringing your practice off the cushion from where you nurture it in your home. And now you're having it in your life in easy, quick ways to do it. Highly practical and highly effective. And highly transformative. And we learn that even in the turmoil, the heaviness, the exhaustion, we always have a connection to that refuge. That place to go to where we can fill up our tanks like a car moving to the gas station when we're running empty. Or literally running on vapors of the essence of gasoline. Sometimes it feels like there's really nothing in our tank, and we're able to bring in and refill our tank on the spot by taking that breath in, that presence, calling in the name and marshaling our forces. And realizing that we're a lot stronger than sometimes we think we are at that moment. And then just trusting, having that faith, fundamental faith, that God has got us. God has our back. You say, I've got you, the American expression, might be English too, I don't know. I've got you. Well, God is saying, I've got you. I'm holding you. I'm there. I got you in this. And there's a great relief as one grows in faith that God has got us, even if we don't know why this is happening, or there's really no reason other than this is our situation and the world is what it is and we just got to get through it. Get through the shit, get through the heavy burden. But we just trust. And it doesn't mean God got us and we don't have to make an effort and we could just lay back and say, fuck it, God's got us. Pardon my French. Right? No. We still put in our best effort. We do the best we can. We say the prayers, and ultimately, that's all we can do. And we've done our best. And there's really a strength in knowing, you know what, I tried my best. It may have flopped. I may have made mistakes. I may have, pardon my French, fucked up. But you know what, my intent was correct. I did my best. And, I'm learning from it. And I'm learning. No magic time machines. And you pick up the pieces and you move forward. But you notice you're not lingering there because that's a burden. But it doesn't mean you forget it, and it doesn't mean you wish it were different, right? So notice the nuance, right? This is not 1970s thinking, right? This is smart. Not that it's not smart, but it's a lot of pop culture sayings out there. That's why I keep going back to it. It just lacks a lot of nuance. It's just not a couple sentences. There's more that needs to be included in a lot of things that we think or is said on TV that's all cute and nice and just live there. No. But we learn to move on and pick up the pieces and say, I did our best. But if you didn't do your best and really didn't care in the situation and it blows up, well, you didn't do your best. But that's okay. You learn from it and you learn, I got to step up a little more. I got to do this. Oh, I got to listen to my intuition. Oh, I did have that feeling. Maybe I need to listen to that a little more in the future. And then you're learning. And then your best becomes better. And we grow. And we perfect. What I'm saying is important when I literally have notes for the first time in months. Because probably since I almost started, because we all go through this, and there's just so many little things we can do along the way that help us. And try to see what's positive in our lives. And this also works for depression and loneliness. These are all emotions. So really a lot of what we go through, we really can apply a lot of these techniques to it. Try to see what's positive in our lives. Even if it's just like, I'm in bed, it's a safe place. I could finally go to sleep and relax. We have days like that where we're just like, that was just a train wreck. But I'm in my bed. I've got food in my stomach. Or some people don't have beds. And some people don't have foods in their stomach. So if we do, we could feel that gratitude of that. And if we don't have that, try to find something you have that gratitude for. It was a nice day, or for those couple minutes next to a tree, it was good. And it's not to push away or ignore things that are not so good, but the energy when you felt that can be medicine, and it could be an antidote to all those other energies that are in our lives, which are not so good. The obstacles and stuff. Or, I had that good lunch. It felt good for those 30 minutes. I was able to sort of escape what's going on. And that 30 minutes that nourishes the whole day. So the whole day doesn't feel depleted. It's not an optimal way to live, that we only have those little minutes, those 5 minutes, or that car ride where we felt calm and we sort of escaped. But, sometimes we take what we can and we hold on to that. And we pray for better days. And we pray to God for better days. And we don't hold resentment if better days don't come for a while. Because that's the nature of the human existence. We don't blame God for that. There's a current on this planet. There's free will, and we have the karmic currents of our society, our world, other people's actions. But we have to trust that there are subtle blessings, or not so subtle. Things could quickly shift, and we have to remain hopeful of that. But there's a lot going on that it can't just magically happen for all of us, because man would lose its free will. And our vibration isn't connected enough to the divine for it to have that level of manifestation, because we've fallen. But that doesn't mean, when we learn to live in presence and in prayer, that we individually don't have a higher connection and ability to change things in our lives that other people don't, because we're no longer on the normal frequency. Does that make sense? So there is a certain level of abilities that occur, but we're still subject to the soup we're in, and we can't resent God because the soup is what it is, and he hasn't yanked us out. Because remember, that would affect the rest of the soup, and maybe in not so good ways. There's a context going on. So we need to learn not to blame God. And we learn to pray for God's help. Pray to God about the sadness we feel if someone dies, and not resent God for the death, or resent God for the loss of the job, or resent God for the obstacles we're having. It's so important. The resentment is a block to us relating to the divine energy, and it is a form of energetic death and a cutting from the divine flow of grace and the healing that we can feel, even if it may not manifest in the world, in what's our world is like, what our personal experience is like. And if we have enough break at our death, it's hard to resonate with the divine because we hold so much resentment. It's important to realize it's not necessarily God's fault what's going on, and not to blame him. It could be the fault of our society, our culture, other people. It's important not to resent God. And if we do, that's something to pray to God about. Please help me release this resentment. Please help me understand how it's not your fault. If sometimes it's hard to understand that, but by contemplating in prayer, we have a different way of perceiving the situation. God does not want our suffering. The very fact these teachings are being taught shows that God does not want our suffering. Otherwise, my mind would not have been calibrated in a certain way. God wouldn't have guided me in a certain way. God wouldn't have permitted the situation where my voice can go out in the world via YouTube. Because that ability just wouldn't have manifested in anyone. The Bible would have long been gone off this planet. The temples and churches wouldn't exist necessarily. So there is a divine presence that remains because he cares. Emmanuel, God amongst us, the divine compassion and mercy and healing of divinity that still is anchored here. It may not just be at the extent we wish it were, but then by our actions, the world is in the state that it is of disconnectedness. But that doesn't mean that we can't learn to connect our individual selves. And from that self, we can change our environment and try to do good that uplifts this world and humanity to bring us closer to the divine. And then we become agents, representatives of God. We become manifestations of Emmanuel, not fully perfected versions, because that basically means you're full Emmanuel is literally a manifestation of Yahweh, and Yahweh Emmanuel could literally be considered as synonyms, as identical in certain ways. But that doesn't mean we can't be a form of that to the extent that we can, regardless of our imperfections. Because the best parts of ourselves also emanate. And we don't put out more sewage, more problems, more density than the goodness and the light and positive change that we put out. We don't need to be perfect, but we can make changes and move things in a positive direction to the extent that we can. Make positive changes in our lives and our families to the extent we can. And we try and we do our best. And we bring in the divine, our God, to help us. And we say the name because these are power names. To bring in that power into ourselves, that milk and honey of divinity, that luminous white liquid, that's the presence of God. We bring in that Shekinah glory into ourselves, the presence of divinity, to assist us, to guide us, to heal us. I personally believe that Shekinah glory doesn't just only exist in like the Ark of the Covenant that existed in the Old Testament, but can exist within us, that luminous light of the divine that exists in our soul. And we learn to tap with it. It's a golden, luminous light. That can, how to put it? We can live from that. And we try our best. And we learn by these little steps of 5 minutes, going in nature, just being present by catching ourselves. We tap into that. God doesn't just live outside of us. God lives within us, in our hearts, in our souls. Our souls could be within our whole body, but I feel like the soul is really its core at the heart center of us. Our heart's compassion and love and caring. It's the most gentle and soft part of ourselves. And we call for it to be healed. So we could emanate with strength, but also we could also resonate with a deeper connection because we have a softness within us. And it's not necessarily weakness. It could actually be our greatest strength and attribute. Looking at my notes here. I normally just do bullet points, and then I speak from them. So I'm going to make sure I want this really to be complete. So all of this really helps us walk even dark periods in our lives, the most storm-like periods. And it gives us a sense of courage to take that next step, to find the resources of strength, to move on to the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And we weather that storm in courageous and strong ways, with strength and resilience, in smart ways. And you could share with a loved one and a friend, so you see that you're not struggling alone. I struggle. I told a friend, because I don't want people to think, oh, he's struggling, he's not all there, I said, there was periods where hot knife through butter, just, I was there at what I'm pointing towards. And I was telling a friend, I was like, I'm not there and I'm teaching. And I said, thank God. I said, because I could really relate right now. I could really share what I brought to those teachings to what's going on in my life. But because I have a view of the other side, and I've walked it using these teachings I've learned for like 15 years, when I was literally really walking it, now I could bring it back because I'm feeling it experientially. So I'm there with you right now. And here are the ways to navigate that, because it's all part of the path. It's all part of the human existence. And sometimes you get beyond and then you come back. But it's easier each time you come back, because you're literally weaving away different ways of being, and it forces you to step up because you know what to transcend. You know the steps, but then you're also thankful because you learn them deeper. And for someone like me who shares guidance, I'm extremely thankful because I feel like I could really share it from being there. And you're not alone. A lot of people are going through tough things. So there's a support in our community. I wanted to highlight something, I don't know if people have a chat window or whatever. I don't know if it's your real name in the chat window, and if it is, maybe you don't want to write anything, but maybe you want to write a couple sentences of where the challenges are in your life. And then, when everybody's written their thing, we could just all pray on that. You might read a couple, you don't have to read it all, or don't read anything if it brings you down, but just say, Yahweh, all these prayers, may they be answered and looked at, and please give everybody who struggles strength. And we really do a communal prayer for our community. We're here to uplift and support each other. And even people who aren't part of our community, who are just part of our lives. So at the end of the prayer, when you have the capacity and it doesn't overwhelm you, and you have that capacity, because it's just say, God, please help. Everybody who's going through difficulties. We're not isolated. And it's important to know that. because sometimes you just feel really alone, and it feels very broken, and there's not a lot of... Sometimes I feel like my bones are breaking sometimes, just from that lack of sustenance. We need to learn to tap into that milk and honey. So doing exercise is so important, cardio, getting out there with natural sunlight, fresh air. It nourishes us. And we're fundamentally not alone. So I wanted to mention at the very end, and this is definitely going to be a core teaching, Shalom and Amen to that. This is so important. I think this really gives people abilities to really work with what's happening in our lives. This is really stepping up to it and engaging in the teachings and making them very practical. We work on the cushion, and then we learn how to bring the skills we've developed and engage it in our lives. And this is Tantra in a divine way, working fundamentally and engaging with energy. And we're using a mantra of the name of God. So congratulations. I got this 5 years after I started. But you could work with it right away. Do you see the power of what this is? Energy doesn't just need to affect us and run us around and exhaust us. We are not bound and blindfolded in the trunk of our cars. We could be at the driving seat of our cars, empowered, engaged, and working on how to ride the road that we're on. Look, if we're in a truck, and this is truck, right? We're in a truck here. We've learned. We're no longer in the Pinto here. We're in a truck on the back roads, and it's bumpy, and it's muddy, and it's shitty, and it might be raining. And we might not necessarily know how to run a truck because, we've never learned we could do a truck. We were basically in the back seat, gagged and blindfolded and unable, and fate and our minds and our emotions are literally driving our car. But now we've learned to step up into our truck, and we don't know. We're learning. So we learn. How do we do it? We gain an ability to this is what a truck does. Oh my God, it's got more suspension than I thought. Oh my God, the setting was on 2 wheels. This is a truck. This is 4-wheel drive. And you turn that lever and you turn into a 4-wheel drive truck. And whoa, it gets easier. There's less bumps, right? You notice the puddles coming up and you're like, oof, that's going to nail my truck. I'm going to get stuck in this and there's no one around. Ooh, no girl. I'm going to learn to turn that wheel and I'm going to go around. I don't always have to be on that road. Look, I can go around on this grass area next to the pit hole and go around it. And then you have a sense, hold on, my direction's all wrong. The highway's to the left. I took the road to the right 3 minutes ago. And you make a U-turn, or if you can't, you learn how to stick your car in reverse, go back, and you make that left turn. And lo and behold, there's the highway. And then you're on a smooth road again. And you've learned how to drive that truck. So when you are encountering it again, because, this is the real world. Sadly, it's not all roses and chocolates, right? But then you've had that experience. You're learning to work directly with what's going on. And this is one of the fastest paths to grow and gain in abilities and attainment. Because we're literally using the momentum and what's occurring in our lives, and we're working with it directly. We're working with energy, and we're using antidotes. How to work with what's going on: breath, names of God, presence, taking walks, exercises, speaking to a friend, just saying what it is. I am in a dark road with a truck. There's no one else helping me, and I don't know what to do. Well, there you are. You're present in your actual situation, and then you're like, okay, what can I do? And you are present, and you're looking at it, and you work with it, and you realize panicking ain't gonna help. You got to use your mind, or you just got to roughen it through. But then as you work your truck, even if you stay on that road, and this is next level, people, and you can't get out of that truck, and you are in that forest, and you don't know when, by you learning to navigate the pit holes and things, the pit holes and the stuff are your emotional characterization of what it is. Don't push it away. You have to kind of navigate your way through, because that's part of the working through your energy of your karma. To see, don't push things away. You have to go through it. But ultimately, let me just say, your Ferrari can navigate that same path. But you get into that Ferrari by navigating the truck and navigating the road. You can't just jump from the Pinto into the Ferrari. That's not possible. That's 1970s. There's a path. You walk it. You do the truck. And one day you become such an expert in the truck and those storms and those pit holes and the water and being lost. You realize that your truck has converted into a Ferrari, and that dirt road is actually a highway. You've gained levels of enlightenment. Things have shifted. You're living at a different awareness and frequency. That is the beauty and the magic of the spiritual path. You can't make this stuff up. This is why this is one of the most wonderful and amazing and wild journeys. And I'm pointing to it. But don't feel bad you're not there. You hop there. One day you're in that Ferrari, next day you're in the truck or you're in the Pinto, and you're like, oh, here again. Oof, this sucks. Right? But you don't hold on to that. You're just like, okay, well, this is what's coming up. There's more for me to work on. I got stuff to work on here, and you move it along. And it gets easier and easier and easier. Your understanding of the divine names become stronger. Your ability to resonate with them are stronger. And then one day you just say the divine names 3 times and you're back in this Ferrari. Versus a year or 2 before, or a couple months before, you were stuck in that truck for months at a time. But now you've learned to catch your breath. You've learned to find your presence. And that could be enough to just pop you right back into the Ferrari, right on the spot. You live in the present. You don't allow things to distract you. You're learning to be there and accommodate everything that's occurring. You're no longer caught up. You are no longer sort of there. So you see, the antidote don't need to take time. We always have the ability to pop out. It's not to it's a wheel popping out. We can awake and be in the presence of our divine alignment at any second, at any moment. And we are learning that skill to be in presence. Present, 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 present. All that exists is the present moment. Repeat that. All that exists is the present moment. We are always consciously present, even if we don't realize it or we're not living from that place. The future and the past don't exist. They're memories or they're projections. What is real is the present moment. In the present, and we live from that, then we're in the Learjet, fully empowered, and we're flying, and we're living our lives very consciously. We're not very reactive. We act intentionally. It doesn't mean we're aloof. We could be right in the middle of the muck. But the muck doesn't affect us to the extent that it throws us off. We can feel sadness. We can feel compassion. We could be unhappy that it's happening, and that's the heart of God. But at the same time, our strength isn't diminished because we have such strength that's possible within us. We just have to learn to live from that place. So here's something very special I like to share with you all. I mentioned this in this last fall or late summer. This is a very beautiful and very powerful practice. When we sleep, when we go to sleep, we can learn in a way to sleep in the arms of God. In many spiritual, mystical traditions, falling asleep while uttering a divine name, one of the names of God, can strengthen our inner connection, and we could feel enveloped in God's care. We put ourselves in that divine milk and honey. Ask that energy to enter our bodies as we drift off to sleep. Now you have to use a name that feels very healing and relaxing and calming to you. So if the name that you're using has a different quality to it, and then also they shift with time, then I suggest that you experiment with one of the other names in your prayer and meditation and see which one kind of makes you feel, oh my, calm and relaxed. And that's the name that you would want to use for this particular practice. Remember, all the names are God's names. So you're just connecting with an energy of the divine that has that reaction with you. And this creates a subtle spiritual religious attunement, alignment, where we could have access to dreams which could provide insight. And even with time, conscious dreaming, where it can lead to dream yoga, where one could actually be awake in their dreams with time and actually have a real profound connection with the divine. But you don't aim for that. Right now, you heal. And by saying the name, our body has a very healing component. By touching in with that, and you just drift off by saying the name. That's step one. And with time, I'll give further different levels of this teaching. But right now, we're trying to bring in calm because of all the stress and emotions we have. So we have a particularly restful sleep. We are putting ourselves in a divine cocoon where our bodies can really heal. So as opposed to falling off in a normal sleep, we think about our day, or we just kind of close our eyes and off we go. We are bringing in the energy of the divine. And as we drift off, drift off while being in that divine current. And with time, that current really permeates our sleep and our dreams. And sometimes we wake up and we realize we've been in that energy. Even if we don't remember our dreams, it doesn't matter. We feel that energy that the names created. And then sometimes in our dreams, we actually find ourselves, when we wake up at 4 a.m, that we've been reciting that name in our dreams for a couple hours. These are deeper ways to have that attunement to the divine, because we are moving it from our lives, awakened lives during the day, and now we're bringing it into our sleep. We sleep 8 hours a day, or some of us 6 or 5, but that's a substantial amount of time. If you sleep an 8-hour night, right, that is a third of every day. We can bring that time and bring it into our connection with God. And as you lie down, you just slowly say the name of God, like Hashem, Hashem, Hashem. You say it in your mind, and you just repeat it softer and softer. And if that prevents you from going to sleep, because it takes practice, then after a couple minutes or 5 minutes, slowly, you just stop saying it. But you don't try to think of anything else. You just kind of be in that openness of that energy which you've cultivated in your practice, and drift off. But then that momentum of Hashem or Adonai or Emmanuel or Yahweh or Elohim or one of the other names carries you into your sleep. So you literally connect with the Wi-Fi of God and you go to sleep. Such a simple instruction, right? Yet, my dear friends, it is one of the most profound practices you can do. And you will see through your experience with it how transformative it is. And if you have to get up in the middle of the night, or you suddenly wake up in the middle of the night, then as you go back to sleep, you say that name. And it's highly restorative, especially if one is exhausted with their life, with every day is just so much going on. It ends up providing a much deeper sleep, so much more restorative, because your prayer when you go to sleep is how exhausted you are. You're feeling that. So when you say the name, the antidote really focuses on where the imbalance is. It's almost you don't even need to say it, because your whole body has the frequency of what's out of balance: worry, anxiety, exhaustion, mixture of all of them. And as you say the name and you feel more relaxed, that's the antidote working for what's out of balance. It's taking the medicine. A teacher told me several times, and I have found it to be true. Medicine is much more powerful, especially if people, they say take it morning or night. If it says just take it the morning, don't do this, right? Because you have to take it in the morning. But if somebody says, oh, you could take this morning or night, it doesn't matter, just take it once a day. Medicine is very powerful taken at night, because there's less for the medicine to fight against. There's less food throughout the day or anxiety. You take the medicine, and it really has those 8 hours when you're sleeping to go in deep. And so it is with the name of God. It permits it to go in deep, that we don't live alone. God is with us, and we learn how to bring God and His blessing with us. So I wanted to do a practice. Look, I like to give complete teachings. So it's been 2 hours. So if people need to go, but a quick practice. Well, I sort of described it. So I think next time we'll work on lying down and trying this practice together. So I don't want this to go too much longer, but people should just try it on their own. And you remember, if you forget to do it, just write it on a piece of paper. If you want to try it, fall asleep using the name that you use. And it's light, it's not forced, it's just softly. And if you don't feel anything when you wake up, that's okay. You just do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And isn't there a better way? Couldn't there be? There's no better way of falling asleep than having God on your mind, to return into His embrace when you're in that in-between state. You're not consciously walking around. You're not in conscious control of your mind, and yet you're not dead. That in-between space is so powerful spiritually. There's a lot of stuff you can do in that space. And this is the first step to a whole practice. To really deepen quickly. But it starts with your cushion, with your daily practice, or once every other day, 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes. You're exercising those muscles, you're gaining those abilities, which helps you to be able to navigate your day with the steps I've indicated, and help you to be able to use what seems like a very simple practice, yet is so profound. And because you've learned to be in the presence of your mind, and you've learned to connect with the name, and you've learned to be still, and you've worked with some of the issues that's come up and some of the difficult emotions that you're learning to work with while you're on the cushion and in your prayer, then when you go to sleep, all those abilities are able and present that you've cultivated, that you're able to say the name in a very conscious, present way, and you've learned how to feel the energy of that name and its blessings. So as you go to sleep, in a way, you've created your ability to be able to feel and work with that divine medicine. So my dear friends, thank you so much for being with me this week. I only have a couple more teachings from the winter retreat to put back out. I believe there will be a core teaching, kind of in the order of things, that will be on Thursday. And I've just started working on it. And it's sort of finishing up one of the last teachings that I gave to the retreat. It's a very, very profound teaching, and it's a teaching that one works towards, but it's in a way kind of piggybacks off a little bit of what I said today. And the teaching is resting in the presence of Yahweh. It's very profound. And so if you're able to listen on Thursday, that would be great. And so thank you for joining me this week. Don't forget the first part of my teaching, as I kind of, in a way, did the practice to calm us down from me launching into a teaching. Go back this week and listen to the first 15 minutes, because there was really a lot there. And there was really a lot throughout. So I encourage people to re-listen to what I say several times. And that way one hears it in different ways, in different levels, and one is able to sort of retain it and remember different parts of it and enter deeper into one's memory. So may everyone be blessed, and please say a collective prayer to everyone in the group or everyone in the world, that they may find peace and strength, divine guidance, and know the love of God. Thank you, and may you all have a wonderful and blessed week. Bye-bye.